Hello, my friends. We meet again. Porter's Place. So good to see you guys. You know the good thing about Porter's Place? I don't have to wear a suit. I don't have to wear makeup. You see all the blemishes in my face. You get Chris Porter uncut and raw. Thank you for joining me, my friends. We got a jam-packed show. The headlines of the day, the NFL wildcard round wraps up tonight in prime time in Glendale, Arizona. That is where the Los Angeles Rams would take on the Minnesota Vikings. As you know, that game had to be moved out of Los Angeles to Arizona because of the raging wildfires, in Southern California. The Rams will be the home team. The Vikings, they are the road team. It's hard to imagine the team only loses 3 games and they had to earn a wild card spot, but that is the case for the Vikings. They're in that NFC North division with the Detroit Lions, who are 15-2. They got the bye week, and they are the NFC North Division champions. Another big story in these parts, the search for the Jacksonville Jaguars' next head coach continues. As we know, the Jaguars, and big ups to them, they've been very transparent about this whole coaching search since they fired Doug Peterson a week ago. They told us Shad Khan, that's the they. Let me be specific. Who is they, Chris? They is owner Shad Khan and General Manager Trent Baalke, telling us last week they're moving on and that this will be a thorough search. And they've got, 10 candidates that they've shown us. They've already interviewed several of those folks, and there they are there on your screen. And this process will continue, and we look forward to that happening. Also, a week from tonight, the college football playoff will kick off between the Notre Dame Fighting Irish and the Ohio State Buckeyes at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. That should be a fantastic game. You got the Notre Dame Fighting Irish with a fantastic defense and an offense that scores timely. And then you've got the Ohio State Buckeyes led by Ryan Day. They have a terrific defense. They have a terrific offense. They are the favorites to win the national championship. We'll talk more about that. But take me full, because I want to talk about a guy that I had the pleasure of covering right here in Jacksonville, Florida. That is Mandarin alum, Jacksonville native, Carson Beck, who has made headlines really since the end of that first quarter of the SEC championship game when he injured his elbow. He was unable to complete the second half. He did come in to hand the ball off to Trevor Etienne as the Dogs won the SEC championship. Gunnar Stockton took over. Gunnar Stockton was the man under center when the Dogs played the Notre Dame Fighting Irish in that college football playoff. Let me say this about Carson Beck. As you know, he had surgery on the elbow before the season started. Many people projected him to possibly be the top pick in the 2025 NFL draft. That has changed since he injured the elbow. The other big storyline when you talk about Carson Beck, his decision to transfer, enter the transfer portal, and take his talents to Miami. Now, I know there are a lot of Bulldog fans who have their gripes about the season Carson Beck has had. Now, I promise you, I'll get into this more, but I want to say this. I'm not one of those fans. He did a terrific job in Athens the last 2 years, 24-3 as the starter for the Georgia Bulldogs. Last year, the committee elected to keep the Dogs out of the college football playoff. They only lost a game in that SEC championship game against Alabama. They blew out Florida State in the Orange Bowl, did enough to get his team in position to get back in that college football playoff. And for some reason, people are starting to question or be hard on Carson Beck, and I have no reason, no true explanation as to why. Now, I've got a man joining me now who's been with me a long time, our college football insider, Brent Beard. Brent, before we even began to talk about Carson Beck, the college football playoff, how long have we been together now?
We've been together basically, Chris, about 15 years. It started when Florida hired Jim McElwain. And we did our first show together, and you probably remember this, in a barber shop.
We did.
So it was
Center
a lot of
Stage
fun.
barber shop, as a matter of fact. So it's been a long time. It's been a long ride. First of all, Brent, you look so handsome in your sweater.
Thanks, sir.
I'm so used to seeing you in your
really
your finest, and I love you on TV, Brent, when you're all dolled up, and I love you with the sweater on. Are you feeling good as you look, Brent Beard?
I am feeling good because the college football season is extended. We've got several more days of it. It's been great to have these playoffs. It's been a fun year. I wish we had more SEC teams involved than we do. But look, we had to get started at some point with the 12-team playoff, which is going to expand soon. But it's up and going, Chris, and that's all that matters.
No doubt about it. Brent Beard, before we really dive into the college football playoff, let's talk about the local kid, Carson Beck, who, as you know, entered the transfer portal, and he's now taking his talents to South Florida to play for the Miami Hurricanes. This is a young man who, as I said here at the top, I have been a big fan of since his days at Mandarin. First of all, Brent, give us some inside scoop as to why Beck, who I thought could have and should have returned to Athens, decided to take his talents to Coral Gables.
Yeah, and look, let's deal with the money stuff first. And now, my understanding is, from what I have seen and people I've talked to, the money at Miami is not that much more than what he got at Georgia. I mean, the dollar sign that you hear is kind of $4 million, somewhere in there, Chris. I think he got probably 3 or a little bit above that when he was at Georgia. The other reason he wanted to go to Miami is his girlfriend's there. His girlfriend plays for the Miami Hurricane ladies basketball team. So that excites him, I'm sure, that they will be able to be together.
And that's not a bad decision, Brent.
It's
Grown
not.
Man going to be with his boo, Miami.
It is.
Miami's beautiful.
It is. But listen, let me dovetail with you about something. Chris, he has been there at Georgia 5 years.
Correct.
5 years.
Waited patiently.
It's not that he was there a year and he's left after some success. When you give someone 5 years in college, listen, you can do whatever you want to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we're seeing here. The other reality at Georgia, besides the injury, this is a struggling team. The offensive line was not what we're used to as far as Georgia quality. The wide receivers, after losing McConkey and Brock Bowers, have been a disappointment. Let's be honest about that. I thought Dom Lovett from Missouri really would come into his own this year. That really didn't happen. Chris, the wide receivers dropped, and you alluded to this the other day, 32 passes. 32, that leads the nation in drop passes. So I'm nowhere near, Chris, as hard on Beck as some people are, because I quite frankly understand the decision.
You know, when you think about, let's go back as far as Carson Beck, and when he left Jacksonville, he was a 5-star recruit.
Yes.
Who, as we said so eloquently there a few minutes ago, who was very patient behind Stetson Bennett. He followed a guy who had won back-to-back national titles. And in 2023, here's his numbers, Brent. 3,941 yards passing, 24 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and he completed a little more than 72% of his passes. 2024, you know, many people saying, you know, he threw so many interceptions. And for Beck standards, he did throw a lot of interceptions. His numbers in 2024, 3,485 yards passing, 28 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and he completed a little more than 64% of his passes. The numbers are not that far off. Completion percentage is down about maybe 8%. He's thrown 6 more interceptions than he threw in 2023. But let me tell you what he lost. A guy by the name of Brock Bowers, who had a sensational year with the Las Vegas Raiders. Here's what he did with the Raiders. 112 catches, 1,194 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He also lost Ladd McConkey. 82 catches with the Los Angeles Chargers this year, 1,149 yards receiving, and 7 touchdowns. Brent Beard, I don't care how good of a recruiter you are, when you lose that type of production, the numbers are going to fall off. And Brent, I feel like in that Notre Dame game, Carson Beck didn't play that game. Gunnar Stockton was the guy. The issues for Georgia, they were exposed in that game. That left side of that offensive line, we saw a lot of wide open drop passes by the Georgia Bulldogs this year, and they were not able to do what has been the staple of the program, not just during the Kirby Smart era, but period. They were not able to run the ball effectively this year.
Right.
And as a result, all of those things will affect a quarterback, and still Carson put up great numbers.
Well, here's the thing people need to remember, too. Around the Florida game was when the interception situation peaked. But after that, in November, Chris, he got a lot better in protecting the ball. And he deserves credit for that before the injury happened. Now, I will also say this, and you know this as well as anybody, Brock Bowers is one of the best players in Georgia history. I don't mean just over the last few years, and I'm not saying he was Herschel Walker, but I will say, I mean, there were games, I particularly think about the Auburn game at Auburn. I mean, Bowers in the fourth quarter basically won that game on his own. It was just amazing what he was able to do. Now, the other side of this is, Chris, Georgia was ready for Vandergriff. They like him. The team likes him. And I'm not saying that they're mad.
You mean Stockton? They're ready for Stockton.
Yes. Vandergriff went to Kentucky and he retired. Stockton, they were ready for him. He has paid his dues. He played well, frankly, in the playoffs. And probably deserves a lot more credit, and he's their guy. And I think that transition kind of naturally happened. So all in all, people may be making a bigger deal out of this than really they should. But I don't blame him for making the move, and I'm hoping that he plays well at Miami. I think another reason he wanted to go to Miami, Shannon Dawson is their offensive coordinator there. He runs the air raid, which is what Mike Leach ran. And I think he wants to look at that. Now, Miami's losing a lot of players besides Cal Moore. They're losing Xavier Restapro. They're losing Martinez, their running back. A lot of those offensive linemen come back. But I think they will have a good enough team where it's going to be very fascinating to see just what Carson Beck does, Chris, in his last year with Miami.
You know, Britt Beard, I thought Carson Beck, you know, as much as I want him to stay at Georgia, deciding to go to Miami wasn't a bad decision. Mario Cristobal has done a good job down there recruiting. He just hasn't been able to put it all together and take that program to the heights that many people believe they should be competing at. And I just want to go back to something about the Gunnar Stockton thing. I get it. I understand it. He has waited very patiently as well for his opportunity. He was a highly sought-after high school quarterback. Did nothing but win. I think he broke a lot of Trevor Lawrence's state records there in the state of Georgia. But, Brent, maybe I'm being a homer here. I understand that a lot of folk and fans are very, what have you done for me lately? They're very emotional people, very emotional creatures. I'm a very emotional creature. But, Brent, I can't argue with 24-3.
No.
And he still had a year to come back and play football. Carson Beck did nothing but lead this team as a starter to 2 SEC championship appearances. They won one. They lost to Alabama last year. Again, Brent Beard, am I missing something here? Was it Kirby saying we're moving on, or was it just a situation of really Carson thought the opportunity was better in Coral Gables?
I think it was kind of both, frankly. I think you could just tell there was a shift in Georgia's last game. That at that point they kind of found their quarterback of the future. I know Beck wasn't around that much, or he got there kind of late. People wanted to make that a big deal. I don't think that's very much of a big deal at all. But I just really don't have a lot of, frankly, patience with a lot of the criticism that I'm hearing with Beck. He found another situation. And let me tell you something, Miami, and this is what I've heard from some Miami folks, Miami searched far and wide. Beck was their number one choice. He was the best guy they could find and they made the offer. I'm sure having his girlfriend down there again, as we mentioned, had a lot to do with a lot of this. But I still think it's a win-win situation.
Yeah.
Georgia's, without reviewing again, Georgia's problem, Chris, was not just at quarterback. Georgia's problem, and Kirby made this clear, we don't have the depth that we have had in the past, and that's what we've got right now because of NIL and the transfer portal, right?
Yep, and I'll let the Carson Beck thing go. I know I'm being a homer. I am a Georgia Bulldog fan. I'm sure most of you already know that, and I know that Carson Beck is going to do a fine job. And if he goes down there with some of the talent they've already assembled down in Coral Gables and puts up incredible numbers, I'm sure he'll be once again a guy considered to be a top 5 pick in the 2026 NFL Draft. A week from tonight, let's shift gears. The national championship game is going down between the Notre Dame Fighting Irish and the Ohio State Buckeyes. Now listen, many people thought the Buckeyes, on paper, who we know they've got the best roster that money can buy, many people believed at the beginning of this that they could be in this position. I cannot say the same about the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. However, the job that Marcus Freeman has done since that week 2 loss, that upset loss, they have done nothing but play terrific defense. They've gotten just enough production out of their offense. I felt like in their win first over my Dogs, they beat the Bulldogs the way Georgia usually beats people. Brent, could you just talk about the terrific job Marcus Freeman has done up at Notre Dame?
Won 9 games in his first year, won 10 games in his second, won 14 so far in his third. I mean, that's trending in the right direction for what Freeman has done. And look, no wonder some of these NFL teams are going to be after him after their season is over, win or lose. Now, there are a lot of teams that, frankly, after losing to Northern Illinois the way they did, Chris, they could have given up on that season at that point. Now, they didn't have a great schedule. I'm going to be very honest about that, but you still got to win it. And they ran the table after that. They've got a good quarterback. Riley Leonard has proved himself. They're very simplistic. They're not very complicated. Love their running back as one of the better ones anywhere. Defensively, that they have been terrific. They've really been almost a copy of Georgia when Georgia has looked good. They've got a tremendous line of scrimmage. Now, here's a problem, though. One of their tackles is going to miss the national championship game. And I heard also over the last little bit that one of their guards may end up missing. So that's going to hurt them on that offensive line. But Notre Dame still in a situation where no one expected them to be there. They didn't have a conference championship game because they're an independent. And you made a really good point with me was, they get that money, and they don't, because they're not in the conference,
right.
They don't have to share that money to do that, Chris.
They don't. So far, they've got $20 million. And, you spoke so well about the offense and the defense, but they've also done a terrific job on special teams.
They really have.
Let's go back to that Georgia game for a second. There were 2 instances that I thought were very critical. That second half, they got the turnover right before halftime. They scored a touchdown, and then the second half of that Georgia game, they returned the kickoff.
That's right.
Then they had a situation late in that fourth quarter where the Dogs were still in that game. They brought the offense, the special teams out. Then they raced it out the field and brought the offense back. I don't think people are really giving Marcus Freeman the credit that he deserves, A, for being able to make in-game adjustments, 1, and B, when his team gets in tough situations, Brent Beard, they never seem rattled. They seem to always have an answer. And I'll be frank, the Indiana game, I expect them to win. The Georgia game, I'm like, whoa, is this just a fluke? And then you play Penn State. Penn State early on was dominating that game.
Yes,
but once again, Marcus Freeman and his team, they remain poised.
Well, they're as poised as Marcus Freeman is. I mean, Chris, I truly think they've taken over his personality on that team.
Yeah.
To me, here's the number one thing for Notre Dame. Notre Dame leads the nation in takeaways.
Yes.
With 32 of them. And when you can do that, you make things happen. And Chris, to your point a few minutes ago, if you can score on a kick return or you can block a kick, you know this, your percentage of winning the game goes up into like the 80 or 90 percentile. And that is one of the things that Notre Dame has done. But if you do, and look, they don't have a great offense. They're pretty vanilla. But they are who they are. They believe in what they do. It worked for them. And Chris, this is not going to change when you and I are 150. It's not going to change, brother, because if you can run the ball and you can stop the run, you're going to win a lot of games, aren't you?
Yep, and that special teams was clutch again against Penn State as they hit that game-winning field goal as they advanced to the national championship game with the win over the Nittany Lions. Now on the other side of the ball, you got the Ohio State Buckeyes, and nobody, Brent Beard, was under more pressure than Ryan Day coming into this game. I think he's lost 5 straight to Michigan. This team, as we know, as I said a few seconds ago, they've spent a ton of NIL money to assemble this roster. They have an outstanding freshman receiver in Jeremiah. But let's talk about the coach for a second, Brent. Ryan Day, to me, even on the sidelines, seems more intense, more animated than we've ever seen him, and his team has responded.
I just saw a mixture of elation and, more than anything, relief.
Yeah.
On the sidelines when they knew that they had won that game. Here's the thing with Ohio State. They made a tremendous error in trying to play Michigan by playing Michigan football.
Right.
And what I mean by that is they played that game in a phone booth. They've got tremendous receivers, as you said, with Jeremiah Smith being the number one. I mean, Quishon Junkins from Ole Miss, the Henderson kid at running back. Those guys are unbelievable. But if you're Ohio State, you have to use your weapons. You've got to get those guys on the perimeter. You cannot do what they did against Michigan, and that's where they learned their lesson. We have to use our weapons. We have the best skill position players in the nation, and because of that, we can win games that way, and that is what they have done. The other thing that they don't get enough credit for, they are incredibly good defensively. Knowles, who is their defensive coordinator, they have allowed, this is unbelievable, they've allowed 11 points per game over the last 2 years, which is the best during that 2-year period. And Chris, it's also the best over the last 12 years as far as a defensive coordinator. So that's a thing they do as well. And to your point, they use their money for these skill position players. But I'm telling you, they're still winning these games, frankly, a lot like Notre Dame is, along the line of scrimmage and using their defense.
You know, Ohio State, in the win over Tennessee, their offense and defense was impressive. Offense more so. Against Oregon, the offense was absolutely outstanding.
Yes.
And before that, Ewers, when he was hit, fumbled, they returned the kick the other way. That was a close game. But even in that game, we felt like Ohio State allowed Texas to hang around. So, again, a week from tonight, it's all going down in Atlanta, Notre Dame and Ohio State. What's most intriguing about this matchup, say you, Brent Beard?
I think it's they do things so differently, but they met their goal in getting to the national championship game. Notre Dame with that line of scrimmage, being able to run the ball, just being themselves this whole year under Marcus Freeman and his leadership. The flamboyance, frankly, Chris, of Ohio State, and with Jeremiah Smith, with those running backs. I mean, Will Howard has done a really good job as far as the quarterback situation is concerned. They've rarely had any close games. I mean, it's two traditional powers. Ohio State hadn't won a national championship since 2014. Notre Dame since 1988.
That's when you were born, 1988.
Yeah. But look, think about that. Lou Holtz was back then.
Yep.
And Chris, you understand football and college football, being a Georgia fan. And I know a lot of Georgia fans don't like Notre Dame, but I think they respect them.
We do.
They understand the tradition with that. I mean, when you think about it, that's mind-boggling, isn't it, brother, that a team with that tradition and what they're able to do has not won a national championship for that long.
Brent Beard, we'll be asking you this again on Sunday on Sports Final when you return, as we really dive deep into the national championship game. But as of right now, who are you leaning towards as far as winning this game? And a week from the actual game kicking off, give me a score.
I'm going with Ohio State for these reasons. I think, one, losing the two players on the Notre Dame offensive line is going to be tough for them. And, Chris, this is one of the big keys to the game. Notre Dame can't chase points. And what I mean by that is the last thing Notre Dame needs to do is get behind what? 10-0, 17-3, or something like that, and getting to a panic and having to score, because they're not going to outscore and keep pace with Ohio State. That's not the way they're built. Now, can they win the way they're built? Yes, I think they absolutely can. When you lead the nation in takeaways and you can take the ball away and set your offense up in good field position, here's the thing with Notre Dame. Notre Dame goes on long drives. That's going to be key. So the line of scrimmage, these long drives and the takeaways, put all that together for me, and I'm still giving an edge. I may change my mind, Chris, but I'm leaning toward Ohio State at this point.
I'll tell you what, Brent Beard, one thing I've learned, if I've learned nothing else during this college football playoff, is to never doubt Marcus Freeman and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, even when they get behind. Because I think, as you said, one, not only do they have good defense, but that defense forces turnovers. They capitalize on those opportunities, which we've seen them do. We saw it against Georgia. We saw it, who do they play last? Penn State. We saw that defense come up with that big interception as Penn State was trying to, when the game was tied, trying to get in position to possibly score. And it's just something about Marcus Freeman and him being so poised.
Yes.
And as you said, this team has taken on his personality. Now, I think the key thing is you can't get far behind, but the critical thing for Notre Dame is they've got to stay out of third and long. They've got to use the clock as their friend. They've got to move 4 yards, 5 yards here, and that clock, every time they snap the ball, it needs to be with about 5 seconds or less on the play clock. But that's going to be key for them, and they've got to play optimistic football. They've got to force those turnovers, and when they do, they got to capitalize. Now, hey, I'm not sleeping on Ohio State. Yeah. I am well-versed in the receiving talent that they have and the number of weapons that they have. I am well-versed in how talented that defensive line is, even against a talented Texas team that has a lot of NFL talent on that roster. Those Buckeyes up front, they were absolutely sensational. But because you're taking the Buckeyes as of today, a week from the national championship game, I'm going to go Notre Dame.
I like it.
They're going to find a way to control that clock, run that football, be physical. And here's the other key thing. The key thing about having Riley Leonard is, I know they were already missing a starter along that offensive line, and now they're going to look like they're going to be missing two. When you have a mobile quarterback, especially in college football, they can buy you time.
Yep.
And he's that type of quarterback that if you miss a tackle here or there, he can break a long. But Brent Beard, I'm going to take, as of today, and as you said, my mind might change, Brent Beard.
Absolutely.
But right now, I'm taking Marcus Freeman. And one other quick thing about him. You know, when you have success, Brent, success, with it comes a lot of love. With success, the expectations get even higher. But now the Chicago Bears are interested in Marcus Freeman. Now, I understand the general manager of the Chicago Bears, he and Marcus Freeman are very close. They go way back. He played for the Bears in 2009. His career was short because of a heart condition that he has. So it didn't surprise me at all that the Bears are interested. The thing that I'm wondering is if they are interested in Marcus Freeman. Number one, you know he's not going to interview most likely with the biggest game of his career a week from today. But are the Bears going to be willing to be patient until after the national championship game to interview him as they too are searching for a head coach?
Well, Chris, I think if they're smart and that he's their number one guy, I think they really need to be. Look, we also need to mention this about Notre Dame. We've given a lot of love to this Ohio State defense, but Al Golden is the D coordinator for Notre Dame, the former Miami coach. And he has done an amazing job. Now, Denbrock is the offensive coordinator. He was at LSU during that point, too. Now, to go back with what we talked about with Freeman, this kind of been the theme of this, which I've really enjoyed, is Freeman gives a lot of latitude for his assistant coaches. He has really let them do a lot of what that they've needed to do. Now, this is the people have always got to watch out for what they say. Brian Kelly, who came from Notre Dame, is at LSU, and Brian Kelly has basically said a few times, well, I enjoyed my time at Notre Dame, but there are things at Notre Dame, academics and so forth, that keep you from winning big. Well, Brian, the reality for this is, right, Chris? If you're in the national championship game, does it get any bigger than that?
Right, a great point. And I guess Brian Kelly is saying that because when he did lead the Notre Dame Fighting Irish to the national championship game, they were blasted by Alabama, if I'm not mistaken, and Nick Saban, and we know Nick Saban is beating up on a couple of coaches in his day. But again, it's going to be interesting. A week from today, the national championship game between the Ohio State Buckeyes and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Brent Beer, as always, it is so good to see you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again on Sports Final this coming Sunday.
Chris, enjoyed it greatly and can't wait.
All right, man. Let's shift our attention now to the NFL and the Jacksonville Jaguars in particular. If first, Director Andy, we could show the candidates for this job. There they are on the screen beside me. The Jacksonville Jaguars, one thing I love is they've been very transparent throughout this coaching search. They have let us know the candidates that they're interested in. If you can take that full, Andy, and in no particular order, I'm going to run down the names there of the guys on the screen. You've got Bryce Flores, the defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings, Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator Joe Brady, Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator Leon Cohen. We've got Detroit Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn, Las Vegas Raiders defensive coordinator Patrick Graham, Detroit Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, Baltimore Ravens OC Todd Monken, the former Georgia offensive coordinator who was there when the Dogs won back-to-back national titles, the Philadelphia Eagles OC Kellen Moore, former New York Jets head coach Robert Saleh, who, as you know, has ties to Jacksonville. He was a part of Gus Bradley's staff, and the Kansas City Chiefs defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo. And we do know, as of this airing right now, the Jaguars, they have interviewed a lot of those guys. Shad Khan telling us a week ago that this is going to be a thorough process, but as all owners say, they are going to try and find the right candidate. Now, here's a guy that I'm going to keep saying until the Jaguars either announce this individual as their next head coach or until they announce the head coach. This is a guy that I think the Jacksonville Jaguars need to hire as their next head coach. Show him, Director Andy. Mike Tomlin. Hear me out. Pittsburgh Steelers. 18 years in the Steel City. You know, I had a mentor once tell me, you always want to leave with people wanting you to stay. You don't want it to be the other way around. Now, has Mike Tomlin stayed too long? I don't know. Here's what I do know. This is a guy that we know for certain can win. He's never had a losing record in his 18 years as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's won a Super Bowl. It was a while back with the Steelers. He's coached in 2 Super Bowls as the Steelers head coach. We do know he knows how to build a culture. We also know, and we've seen in recent years from the time when they kept Ben Roethlisberger too long and after, that he can win with pretty much any quarterback. I think it was Mason Rudolph last year that took him to the playoffs. And we also know, and we want to believe, that Trevor Lawrence is, in fact, what many people said he was coming out of Clemson, that generational quarterback. We just got to find someone who can develop him. Now, I want to firmly believe that before Ben Roethlisberger left, after Ben Roethlisberger left the Pittsburgh Steelers, everybody after him, quarterbacks have been so-so. Russell Wilson did a decent job this year. Justin Fields did a decent job as well. But you got to believe if Mike Tomlin can win with guys who are no longer considered franchise quarterbacks or never considered franchise quarterbacks, he should be able to come to the River City and coach up Trevor Lawrence and help Trevor Lawrence become that true franchise quarterback. We do know this. Whatever coach comes here, they're going to be tied to Trevor Lawrence based on the amount of money and the years that the team has signed him to with that $275 million extension. We also know that Mike Tomlin can build culture. We know his defenses are tough. They're physical. You know when he walks in the room, he's going to demand the respect of the players. Nobody will have any question about his ability to lead men. Now, the question is, many of you are saying, how would you convince Mike Tomlin to lead Pittsburgh? Well, from what I've heard, they're ready to move on in Pittsburgh. They've only had 3 coaches since 1960-something. That's back when I was born. Brent Briere, he was too young back then. He's the third coach. It was Chuck Knowles. It was Bill Cowher. Now it's him. And he's lost 6 straight playoff games. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I just want to make the playoffs. Can we just make the playoffs? Can we be in the playoffs consistently? That's a problem I would love to have. Losing in the playoffs. That means we win if we make it to the playoffs. But how do you convince him to come to Jacksonville? First of all, you have got to sell him on what Trent Baalke sold to Shad Khan, and that is that Trevor Lawrence is indeed our franchise quarterback. You also tell him, listen, we've got about $40+ million in salary cap, 10 draft picks in 2025. The 5th overall pick, we've got that stadium of the future. Stadium of the future. Jacksonville, our owner has a vision and a plan, and that stadium of the future, along with the right coach putting the pieces together, we'll be winning. We'll move into that new stadium. We'll be a destination for all NFL fans. Also, give Mike Tomlin last say on all player personnel decisions. Now, I'm not sure if he would want to work with Trent Baalke. That's to be seen. Don't know any of that. But I think one of the other keys to having him come is say, hey, you will have the last say when it comes to personnel decisions. And then finally, you got to pay the man. You got to pay the man. He's a Super Bowl winning coach, 18 straight years, not a losing season. Make him one of the highest paid coaches in the NFL, if not the highest paid. Put him a yacht in there, Shad Khan. Throw him in a private jet. But we need to sell him the beauty of our first coast. We've got water. We've got golf. We've got sunshine. No state taxes. I really believe we could make this happen. But we have to make some type of trade with the Steelers? Absolutely. I've always been told to make money, you've got to spend money. Translation, you got to invest. Send them some picks. I mean, heck, we've had top picks for decades since I've been here since 2009. And I can't even name, besides Brian Thomas Jr. right now, and I'll give Trayvon Walker some love, and I guess I'll give Josh Hines Allen some love as guys who panned out since I've been here with that top pick since 2009. But again, take him full. Mike Tomlin, the current head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I believe this is the guy that the Jacksonville Jaguars should hire. But on Sunday, James Coleman and we talked about who he thinks should be the next head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Take a listen. The search for the next Jaguars head coach is in full effect. The Jags looking for a coach to replace the fired Doug Peterson. Joining me now is our NFL insider, my brother from another mother, James Coleman. James, so good to see you.
Hey, man, it's good to be seen.
James, before we talk about the candidates that the Jacksonville Jaguars are looking for, let's talk about some comments Trevor Lawrence recently made in his end-of-the-year press conference about some of the issues. They lack culture. They were soft. They need a head coach who can weather the ups and downs of a long season. His words say what?
That's a lot of buzzword bingo right there, man. Anytime you see a firing happening, anytime you see anything, whether at college, high school, or pro, we're going to talk about culture, talk about teams being soft, and we're going to talk about the head man, which all of that is indicative of what the leadership was. And attitude reflects leadership. And what they do need is a guy that they can play for, that can motivate them, even if they are pros. And I think while Trevor's not lying, but at the same time, that's what's said all the time.
All right, now let's talk about the candidates. We know that the Jacksonville Jaguars have several guys that they are targeting to replace Doug Peterson. These are your top 3 candidates, 3 guys who we know the Jags have either requested interviews for or have already interviewed. Defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions there, Aaron Glenn. Their offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson. And the OC for the Buffalo Bills, Mr. Joe Brady. Now, these are James Coleman's top 3. James, why Aaron Glenn?
Well, I think one of the things that we've been missing here in Jacksonville is a defensive identity. Even this past 2 seasons, if the defense could make some opportune stops, you probably have a playoff caliber team. And a lot of times when you have a soft mentality, defensive coaches typically try to get that out of there. So you come in with a guy like Aaron Glenn, who has a defensive mindset. Obviously, he's defensive side of the ball. He's also with a good culture that was built in Detroit that probably mirrors what we want here in the Bengals. You want attitude, you want grit, you want guys flying around the ball. You get them a good offensive coordinator, you can see a quick turnaround.
And we know our defense has been, to just be quite frank, not good at all. And it was one of the worst in the NFL this year. Trevor Lawrence said, James, he would love, if he had to say, he wants a young offensive-minded coach. Ben Johnson, why is he your guy?
Again, just the offensive mindedness, and you having a quarterback that you've invested, that's the face of your franchise, that's going to be key to you being able to win games. What they've been able to do in Detroit in the passing game, even developing receivers like Amon St. Raw, when you look at Sonic and Knuckles, David Montgomery and Jamar Gibbs, what they're able to do that, we have a lot of those exact same qualities here in Jacksonville. So again, why reinvent the wheel when you can just look up north, bring that down south, and maybe add your own seasoning and spice to it. He's one of the hottest offensive minds in the NFL. Bring him here, revitalize. If you can outscore teams, you can win a lot of games as well.
I'm going to wait because I want to already be out. There we go. All right, James, another offensive young guy, a guy who helped the LSU Tigers win a national championship and is doing great things up in Buffalo. Joe Brady, why is he one of your guys?
Similar thing is what I just talked about Ben Johnson. When you look at what he's been able to do in Buffalo, obviously he has one of the best quarterbacks in Josh Allen. But what he's also done is they've traded out some of their better wide receiver talent. And he's been able to come in here, and that passing game did not take a step back. In fact, they are doing better with younger wide receivers and younger weapons around them. Running game is still doing very, very well. You've got all the combinations that you need to be able to win games. Time of possession, good running game, offense that's efficient in the passing game. And again, another guy that could take Trevor Lawrence and maybe take him to that next step. Again, you get this guy, you get a defense that can play complementary football, you can win games. And again, winning, there is no such thing as a bad culture on a winning team. You're getting another guy that's used to winning, whether on the college level as well as the NFL level. So I think this is a no-brainer as well.
And bottom line, James, it doesn't matter who you hire. Trevor Lawrence has got to play better.
Oh, without a doubt. The biggest thing is Trevor's got to mature. He's got to take a step forward as a guy who is a veteran. There's no reason why we keep having rookies and first-year guys come in here and play better than Trevor. Trevor's got the tools. We've got the wide receivers. We've got the running game. Offensive line, okay. Every offensive line has its weaknesses, but if you get rid of that ball in the league-mandated time in 1.75 to 2 seconds, you don't have to worry about that. His decision-making has been one of his Achilles' heels.
James Coleman, one of the best in the business. So good to see you, my friend. His candidates that he believes will be the best, one of them, to be the next head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Thank you, James. So that was James Coleman, my brother from another mother, and there are the candidates that we know the Jacksonville Jaguars have requested to talk to. Several of those guys they've already spoken with. Again, I want to thank my guy, Brent Beard, our college football insider, for joining me today to talk all things college football. I hope you've enjoyed today's show. We'll be back sometime this week. For all of us here at Porter's Place, enjoy your day. That's 3.